All right. Hey, good morning, YouTube. Looks like we're live. There is a quick snapshot of some weather. I guess that hurricane came up the coast and went into Nova Scotia and is pretty much gone now. I did see some video out of up there in Nova Scotia yesterday. That was one of the YouTube channels put out from the coastline yesterday. Was quite interesting. And it was a storm, but I don't think it left everybody pretty much unscathed, I think. So you got a pretty long line of what looks like a front coming through the middle of the country there. As you can see, the big green coming down out of Wisconsin down to Texas. Everybody needs rain this time of year. There was Greg Hunter was doing his weekly wrap up from Missouri yesterday and talking about the need for water there, rain. So hopefully maybe some of that'll go through there. Just not the corn crop. But how's everybody out there doing? Let's see. Oh, we got Black Cat Outdoors. Hey, good morning. How you doing? So there's your weather snapshot. We're pretty clear out here. The monsoon is hitting the southwest pretty good. Vegas has had some pretty good rains the last couple of days. And looks like there's some rain coming off the coast there that might actually hit our way. We shall see. It was like 100 here yesterday. A little warm. Hey, good morning, Walter. How's it going? How's the water situation out your way, Walter? You guys is it an average rain year or too dry, too wet? All right, so we won't dally too much on that, but there you got an image of it. So where do we move to next? I'm going to start with this hearings of the FBI agents who are undermining the country. If you haven't seen the video and if you don't believe in demons, go watch the video. It's pretty much everywhere. I think it's on social media. I don't think the mainstream media have played it at all. But this Strozik character has some serious facial expressions that makes you question his sanity and his status among the living here. Zero Hedge has got him kind of as a snapshot of pictures, but there's some video out there. If this fellow's not possessed, he needs to be put out of our misery. I guess he should be put out of our misery for that too. But no remorse for the undermining of the country by these people is pretty apparent. But there's these videos aren't. They're just he was getting hammered by a congressman, and he just sat there and smiled and grinned and laughed it up like a arrogant teenager, really. You can't think but hope that here's the video. It's on Twitter. It's not even like it's like something out of a movie. It's not even it's not funny. I don't know how people look at that and be like, this guy is in the FBI at what level? And that means that he worked close to people who knew his real character, you figure. So how much similar are they? But more to follow on that. You can only think that him and that lady should be under the prison at the end of all this. But we'll see how they how they get off scot free somehow. Yeah, right, Black Cat. If you don't believe in demons, take a look at Nancy Pelosi. Absolutely. There's many, many other examples. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they reveal themselves for who they truly are sometimes. Hey, Barry, good morning. Yeah, clear. It looked real clear up in your area, kind of like where it is down here. Is it as hot up there? Is it? We're in around 100 yesterday. Might be a little cooler today. The clouds are still settling in. There's some afternoon thunderstorms brewing yesterday, and some of the clouds are still lingering around today. So we might get a little. It won't heat up quite as fast today. Maybe we'll be a little bit cooler. Maybe 95. You never know. But yeah, I'm not so much concerned about the testimony here because they're pretty guilty of undermining the processes of our government, and they have no remorse. And the fact they act like demons is even more concerning. So yeah, what was that? Ghostbusters? The character out of Ghostbusters, probably. Oh, Barry, you're nice and cool, man. 87, nice. I was having a conversation with Carl the Madman out of Canada last night, and we were doing some conversions, and it was like after he converted Celsius and everything. Yeah, it was like 84 up where he was, and he's like, yeah, that's a heat wave for them. But I was like, well, you got humidity too. He's like, well, yeah, they do have humidity, which makes it much worse. So moving on from there, the president's in England getting the Riot Act from them and giving them the Riot Act back at them. That should be interesting to see what that turns out. But in the meantime, with Brexit going on, or well, Brexit not going on, it appears. We've talked about this in the past. It's getting a little more steam, it looks like. This is out of Mint Press News, linked here on the Zero Hedge. The White House's frenzied anti-Iran campaign has entailed unprecedented attempts to twist the arms of U.S. traditional allies. The pressure may be backfiring. A reality made all the more clear by Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov's claims that Europe's three major powers plan to continue trade ties with Iran without the use of the U.S. dollar. And this has been going on for a couple months now. That we've talked about it, and it's been in other informational sources, so there's probably a lot more to it than people are giving it credit, I think. So the move would be a clear sign that the foremost European powers, France, Germany, and the UK, plan to protect the interest of companies hoping to do business with Iran, a significant regional power with a market of around 80 million people. Right? So the Russian statement came as Trump insisted that European companies would absolutely face sanction in the aftermath of Washington's widely derided sabotage of the Six-Party Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, JCPOA. This goes all the way back to May, when the president had blasted him for the agreement, the Six-Party Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. That's the agreement he's talking about. And they said the U.S. would reinstate nuclear sanctions on Iran at the highest level of economic bans on the Islamic Republic. So we're going to get in trade wars with other trade wars or start more trade wars with supposedly our closest allies. So the Russians, speaking in Vienna, blasted the U.S. move as a major violation of agreed upon terms, which actually made it possible to significantly alleviate tension from the point of view of the military and political situation in the region, upholding the non-proliferation regime. The Russian further said Iran was meticulously fulfilling its obligations at the time that Trump destroyed the U.S. end of the agreement. So France, Germany, and the UK have pleaded with America, writing to the Treasury Secretary, etc., Secretary of State. Remain writing to them saying that the nuclear accord remains the best means to prevent Iran's acquisition of nuclear deterrent, given the lack of any credible alternative. And here they mention the hardline stances of Pompeo and the National Security Advisor John Bolton. The pleas were likely greeted with bemusement, and I think that's the key person at fault here. I think is John Bolton. Ever since he's got into that position, the war tensions have been ratcheted up, just like under Bush. That's his specialty, is creating war. So I think we can probably expect more of that, as long as he has a position like that to influence people and whatnot. So sanctions will be hitting Iran's automotive sector, gold trade, and other industries is going to start August 4th, while further sanctions will hit the country's oil industry and central bank on November 6th. Larionov, the Russian again, says everyone agrees that increased sanctions on Iran by the U.S. is an absolutely illegitimate practice. It cannot be accepted as appropriate, but it is a policy that can hardly be changed. Severe clashes are expected in the trade, economic, and political spheres. So again, this is him speaking at a conference in Vienna where these quotes are coming from. This thing's quite okay. It ends right there. Okay. Who is Maas? I just skipped over Maas. German's foreign minister Heiko Maas singled the European exasperation with Trump. The German foreign minister questioned the continued viability of the transatlantic partnership, and he also added the urgency with which we must pool Europe's strength in the world is greater than ever before. Our common response to America's first today must be Europe united. That's a good way to keep Brexit from happening. There's some articles out to this morning about Trump giving Theresa May the riot act over there. over Brexit and how he told her. I think the quote was he told her how to do Brexit and she messed it up. And he's put his full support behind this Johnson fellow, I believe, for a prime minister. So getting involved in other countries' affairs, if you will, to the point of telling them who they should choose as their leaders. The Iran Atomic Energy Organization Director, Ali Akbar Saleh, stressed Iran's doubt in Europe's ability to follow through with its independent foreign policy. So Iran's statement coming out of them is Iran understands that Europe and the United States are strategic partners, but they are not lovers who share the same bed. European independence vis-a-vis the U.S. is under threat. In the eyes of the whole world, Europe has become the U.S. lackey. We are faced with an American administration whose decisions have left the world in shock. Mr. Trump is pushing foreign companies that do business with us and threatening countries that buy our petrol. He's after fast results, but the EU, Russia, and China didn't expect to be put under so much pressure. The EU is still under shock. The bloc is like a boxer that has been hit with an uppercut. It needs time to pull itself together. That's the statement out of Iran. Iran saying, hey, everybody wake up. So the closing bold print, Iranians and Europeans alike are hoping that EU leaders can finally put their money where their mouth is and unshackle themselves from the U.S. imposed hegemonic bondage constraining them since the end of the Second World War. And a lot of that has to do with trade in the dollar. Like they were saying earlier, most of the sanctions revolve around trade with the dollar. If they abandon that, and then you're going to see a lot of chaos economically. And that's what it's all about. Oh, I missed a lot of chat here. What's going on? Morning, M. Long. Thanks for checking in. 01 Crom's with us. Dun, dun, dun. Trade war is a war on the people, right? Because they're the ones that ultimately pay the price. Nobody else. It all gets passed down. Tariffs are attacks on us people. So attacks like, yeah, sure. Especially in select goods. We talk about the trade war with China, the pork and stuff. It's going to really hit. And there's articles, many articles out there about how it's affecting pork producers, soybean producers, in particular in relationship to China. We don't necessarily, that's separate with the Iran situation, but, you know. Hey, good morning, Alicia. Yeah, I'm not sure about the oil prices, 01 Crom. It's not seeming to be the effect. We're still at around $70. I mean, that's relatively, it's higher than we've had in a while, but there seems to be a play here, and OPEC just agreed. Where's that at yesterday? It was from yesterday, the day before. I probably can't find it, but OPEC agreed to increase output and maintain levels of output, which didn't really rock the markets, I guess you'd say. But it continues the positioning of the U.S. as the biggest oil producer again. That's still going on out there too. So I don't know about increasing higher oil prices. I'm not sure if that's going to be the end state. It might be somebody's agenda, but I don't know if it's going to happen. We seem to be in a all-out oil production war as well, where people are pushing out as much oil and gas as they can get their hands on. But if we're exporting more than we've ever exported since the 70s, um, and I would say that the oil prices remaining below 80 is kind of the tipping point, I think, to where we would say that we're going back into the increased oil prices of '06, '05, whatnot. But inflationary speaking. But anyway, we'll see. Hey, Castaway, good morning. How's things down under? I don't have the weather pulled up for your neck of the woods. So no more to follow on that with the Iranian situation. There's obviously the Israel situation. There's talk of the Islamic State army in Syria. Israel shot down a drone the other day, as reported by Locked and Loaded 100% on his channel. So there's direct talk of increased tension there and possible ground conflict. So speaking of conflict, checking in our favorite collapsing society, Venezuela. I haven't looked in on this week. This is the most current article I could find from this morning. And it actually says it was at 6:30 p.m. July 13th. That's because it's out of Sydney, Australia. So this is a Sydney Morning Herald. So yeah, it's already evening there. But seeing the increased issues there, obviously starvation is a concern. Very little food getting delivered to where people are from where it's being grown or processed. People are abandoning their kids. There's this picture of Colombia National Police officers arrived at the hospital with an abandoned newborn baby girl who was discovered swaddled by a car near a stadium. And that's going to be a really bad side effect, is all the wards of the state. That was Colombia. So yeah, that was somebody, potential refugee from Venezuela, abandoning their kids. So that's the human story. Let's get down to the gist of what's going on. Refugees crossing the border from Venezuela into Colombia. As Venezuelans flee the country. Let me start over. I need more coffee. As Venezuelans flee their country's collapsing economy and autocratic government in rising numbers, a grim toll is becoming evident among the youngest arrivals in Colombia. Children are sleeping on the streets, suffering from hunger and untreated infections, sometimes being lured into sex work. Yeah, that's probably going to be one of the bigger impacts as well. More than 500 Venezuelan children have been taken into custody in Colombia, according to the government documents. Police regularly turn away at least one or two children a day over the nation's turn them over to the nation's child welfare agency, where they are then placed in foster homes. At the city's biggest soup kitchen, some parents have even tried to give their children away. That's a bad side effect too. You're going to get all these wards of the state who feel obligated to serve the state and subservient to the state because of their status growing up. So side effects could be felt in Colombia as well if this continues. I think the estimates were like 2 million total Venezuelans had left since this whole mess started. It says over 1 million Venezuelans have fled across the border into Colombia in less than 2 years. That's just Colombia. A recent census found the estimated 442,500 Venezuelan migrants living in Colombia illegally. How can they never say that when they talk about people coming into America? They never say migrants living in America illegally. They just say migrants. Well, this is the Sydney. This is Australians writing, so they're not quite as politically correct, I guess. And they're writing about a country so far away, so they don't really concern themselves with that, I guess. About a quarter of those are minors, 10% are 5 years old or younger. And that's another thing. We've had all these Central American stories, Honduras and other countries that having their issues with all these large chains of migrants, I guess you'd say, refugees leaving and coming to our southern border, but yet we don't have a big rush of Venezuelans coming to America, doesn't seem like. Or we haven't heard a story about it. Why is that? Is that because Colombia is able to absorb it? Colombia, Brazil, the large South American countries? Or Venezuelans don't want to go to America, or we're just not going to allow it? You would think with 2 million people live in a country that there would be some of that influx absorbed in America, but we haven't seen the stories about that. Interesting. But you do hear there's been lots of impacts in the local countries around Venezuela. So Hondurans who have less capacity and less financial assets are able to get to travel across Central America and Mexico to the southern U.S., but Venezuelans who have a lot more traditional means aren't. I don't know. I find that odd. So Calcutta, Colombia having their issues with the surge in welfare, distressed parents lugging children in Calcutta's smoggy, congested streets as they try to sell root beer or candy to pay for a roof over their heads. So the strains on the system in Calcutta are a concern. Oh, here's the hit piece. So comparing Colombia to the U.S. here. In contrast to the United States, where more than 2,000 children were separated from their parents at the border with Mexico under the Trump administration's zero tolerance policy, Colombian officials say they are trying to keep newly arrived migrant families together while boosting the number of foster families available to step in at a moment's notice when needed. Figures provided by the Colombian government show 502 Venezuelan children have been taken into custody since the start of 2017. 99 of them were determined to be the victims of negligence. While 80 had suffered sexual abuse, dozens of others were determined to be homeless, physically abused, or in a state of malnutrition by the time they reached child welfare officials. Yeah, I would imagine it's a pretty bad state of affairs. So the impact on the next generation is quite large. Yeah, you're talking about the exploitation going on here. Girls forced into prostitution, ages 15 and 16. Drug-related violence. And the influx of Venezuelan refugees is not helping any of this situation. So how this, this goes to show, talk about when people leave one area to go to another, how it affects the economics and the dynamics of another area, whether it's country or like when everybody left New Orleans and Katrina, a lot of people stayed in other areas away from them, large distances away. There's a map, I think, on a FEMA website or somewhere where it shows the numbers of people who didn't return to New Orleans and where they moved and where they basically migrated to in the U.S. It's got fairly accurate numbers, thousands in different areas. So a little bit of a human interest story mixed with the economics and everything of the Venezuela collapse and people basically leaving in droves, abandoning ship if they can get over to adjacent countries. Again, and I guess your final sign of the apocalypse today, this is on the CNBC. Survival of the richest, the wealthy are plotting to leave us behind. Let me check in on the side chat before we get started here. Tariffs, okay, we were talking about that. Now, Walter Davis, just a thought on Venezuela. Plastic surgery and implants were really popular. I'll take your word for that, Walter. I didn't know that. I don't know, Walter. People that could afford those things probably aren't struggling. I would imagine people that were getting those type of surgeries either left because they had the means already or are able to insulate themselves from the effects because they're at that upper crust level. That's just my opinion. I mean, how many? I guess I don't know. I don't want to find out. I don't think, but yeah, I guess if you were in that situation, it would not hold up well. I guess it would really depend on the size of implants and plastic surgery and the reason for it. As Alicia points out, not to mention people that take hormones and implants need to be replaced. Hey, what's up, YouTube? What's up, Irish? How you doing? Checking in with us. Is America's war on drugs affecting Venezuela's economy? I think more so our sanctions against their government because of their socialist tendencies is more affecting them than the drug war. Right, Irish, prime example of taking care of yourself before anything happens. Yep. And having a good bug out plan, even in, I guess, on the large scale. Where are you really going to go if you have to go? Because the reception where you are going may not be that pleasant. Although the Colombians seem to be doing a decent job of absorbing. You know what I mean? So here, our final sign of the apocalypse. Survival of the richest, the wealthy are plotting to leave us behind. So this fellow was, what's this guy's name? Douglas Rushkoff. Last year he was at he's talking about, he's writing an article about last year. Talk about behind the times. He got invited to a super deluxe private resort to deliver a keynote speech to what he assumed would be 100 or so investment bankers. It was the largest fee he had ever been offered for a talk, about half of his annual professor salary. All to deliver some insight on the subject of future of technology. So he goes on here. After he arrived, he was ushered through the green room. Instead of being wired with a microphone, he just sat there at a plain table as my audience was brought to me. 5 super wealthy guys from the upper echelon of the hedge fund world. They had no interest in the information I had prepared about the future of technology. They had come with questions of their own. So he gets into these here. They started out, they're asking about Ethereum versus Bitcoin, quantum computing. Slowly but surely, however, they edged into the real topics of concern. Which region will be less impacted by the coming climate crisis, New Zealand or Alaska? Is Google really building Ray Kurzweil a home for his brain, and will his consciousness live through the transition? Or will it die and be reborn as a whole new one? That's an interesting question. And finally, the CEO of a brokerage house explained that he had nearly completed building his own underground bunker system and asked, how do I maintain authority over my security force after the event? Oh, they're getting some interesting questions. Well, first, you better have your security force plenty of food and water if you got your own underground bunker. The event that was their euphemism for the environmental collapse, social unrest, nuclear explosion, unstoppable virus, or Mr. Robot hack that takes everything down. So it's synonymous with whatever it is that takes society, it collapses society. This single question occupied us for the rest of the hour. They knew armed guards would be required to protect their compounds from the angry mobs. But how would they pay the guards once money was worthless? What would stop the guards from choosing their own leader? All viable questions. The billionaires considered using special combination locks on the food supply that only they knew, or making guards wear disciplinary collars or some kind of in return for their survival, or maybe building robots to serve as guards and workers, if that technology could be developed in time. So these people are really looking here in the near term with some concerning questions. And this is, so continuing on, that's when it hit me. At least as far as these gentlemen were concerned, this was a talk about the future of technology. Taking their cue from Elon Musk colonizing Mars, Peter Thiel reversing the aging process, Sam Altman, Ray Kurzweil uploading their minds, they were preparing for a digital future that had a whole lot less to do with making the world a better place than it did with transcending the human condition altogether and insulating themselves from a very real and present danger of climate change, sea level rise, mass migrations, global pandemics, nativist panic, and resource depletion. For them, the future of technology is really about just one thing: escape. It's a very transhumanist approach that most of them do seem to have. They're just trying to find a way out for themselves to be less human, I guess you would say, and not deal with the human problems. This would have been an interesting discussion. I wonder why they didn't call Southern Prepper One or somebody that could actually give them some real insight. Instead, they want to talk about the technology to transcend it. This link's in the description box below. If you want to read it, it has other links to other similar tangential stories here. The current drive for post-human utopia is something else. It's less a vision of the wholesale migration of humanity to a new state of being than a quest to transcend all that is human: the body, interdependence, compassion, vulnerability, and complexity. Yeah, escaping all the things that are important that make us human, right? As technology philosophers have been pointing out for years now, the transhumanist vision too easily reduces all of reality to data, concluding that humans are nothing but information processing objects. Oh yes, the transhumanist. I didn't know it was going to get into transhumanism, but it kind of just seemed like that's what it was leading off with when I first caught the first bit of it. And this is the nature of the people who are basically running a lot of the show. This is their outlook. So continuing on, it's a reduction of human evolution to a video game that someone wins by finding the escape hatch and then letting a few of his BFFs come along for the ride. Will it be Musk, Bezos, Thiel, Zuckerberg? These billionaires have the presumptive winners of the digital economy, the same survival of the fittest business landscape that's fueling most of the speculation to begin with. So he goes into the history of, back to the 90s, technology, development, yada, yada. Here he says, the future became less a thing we create through our present day choices or hopes for humankind than a predestined scenario we bet on with our venture capital but arrive at passively. So he's saying this freed everyone from the moral implications of their activities. Technology development became less a story of collective flourishing than personal survival. Worse, as I learned, to call attention to any of this was to unintentionally cast oneself as an enemy of the market or an anti-technology curmudgeon. You end up like Sarah Connor in their eyes, right? Oh, this is a pretty interesting article. I don't know if I can get in the whole thing. It's pretty long, as you can see. But that's definitely something to check out, the mentality of the uber rich, as he mentions at the beginning. And how they're going to transcend the coming collapse that they foresee as whatever the cause of it is. And here's how Skynet happens right here. This is a good paragraph. The more committed we are to this view of the world, the more we come to see human beings as the problem and technology as the solution. The very essence of what it means to be human is treated less as a feature than bug. No matter their embedded biases, technologies are declared neutral. Any bad behaviors they induce in us are just a reflection of our own corrupted core. It's as if some innate human savagery is to blame for our troubles, just as the inefficiency of a local taxi market can be solved with an app that bankrupts human drivers. The vexing inconsistencies of the human psyche can be corrected with a digital or genetic upgrade. Yeah, these people have been reading a lot of L. Ron Hubbard and stuff, I guess. So this is a pretty deep look into the psyche of the people who think like that, for sure. Who essentially don't live in the human realm anyway. Their interaction with humans is a very limited as far as the human essence of struggle and suffering. They don't live in that world. They live in a very high-end world of where everything is provided, everything they ever needed right now. They're trying to figure out how to not ever be without the things of survival and using technology to transcend that. Interesting article. It's right up Alicia Clegg's avenue right there, Alicia. I expect you to do an in-depth article on something like this. An in-depth video, I should say. The Irish USMC, buy your guards, hookers, and blow, they'll loyal. that might last for a little while. That'll run out pretty quick. You would ask him how he can build a lightsaber, right? Alicia, transhumanists push the transgender movement high up, ex-military involved, and many billionaires. Yeah, they do think they'll live forever. Yep. Walter proposes they will be victims of their own machinations. Possibly, but we'll all suffer with them too, because their machinations are going to be so large as to impact us all. Yeah, Alicia, it's in the description box. Yeah, I think it's the last one, actually. I think it's the CNBC article. It's the only, but all the links are in the description box. That's a very interesting, and there are transitional links in here as well. I think, yeah, the other goes to other issues on the transhumanist talk and whatnot. It goes into other articles for your rabbit trail searching needs. But the rich are finding out a way to survive as well. They just have a lot more capacity to do it. Hey, good morning, High Pocket. How's it going? Did you make it to Utah yet? Yeah, Barry, I think these people are talking about far beyond biological life. They want to transcend the biological timeline by um, with technology basically supporting them, however, whether it's merging with machines or whatever. Transhumanism is very deep into making people putting their thoughts into computers and stuff like that. It's a very disconcerting movement, I guess, I would say. But that's a very interesting article if you want to talk about SHTF preparedness and how you're going to have to deal with. I mean, we all think about the hordes, like they're worried about the hordes coming to take their stuff they've prepared and having their own secure. They can pay for a squad of security, whereas we have to develop our teams and develop relationships and actually work together, find common bonds, find common ground, find a mixed group of capabilities within a group so that everything's covered. You have your security guys, your food people, your people that have like engineering skills. You want all that in your realm and your group, whereas these people are just basically trying to buy their way out with all their money, where they think they can. Well, I can pay people now to be his security or to build his home and his bunker, but what does he do after the fact? He's not developed those relationships to have those people be loyal or to have any mutual benefit, because when everything's collapsed, these billionaires have no use to anybody. Why would he, if you're sort of security detail, like, why am I protecting you? You're not helping me, other than you have this place already prepared, but I'm here and you're here, but you're basically worthless. So why wouldn't your security guards turn on you and basically take you out when you have no use in this new reality that while you're prepared to survive it, you're not prepared to thrive in it because you have no human skills? That would be my take on that. I think that might scare them the most is an era without the technology where things fall apart to the point where technology is useless. They are useless. And that scares them a lot, which it should. It's when you're left there, helpless, not able to provide for yourself. You're not able to just go out and buy what you want because of you've built up this wealth or whatever. But yeah, you don't know how to grow a basic garden or to provide your own food or even scavenge for your own food. You've always relied on other people. I mean, look at Zuckerberg, who thinks he could lift a hand to help himself. Deep thoughts that they're having, I'm sure. Deep thoughts. So everybody sees it coming, or everybody thinks it's coming at some level in some time, but how you prepare for it is definitely different. So we'll leave you with that, folks. We got to get out of here. You all have a good day. It's Friday the 13th. Live it up while you still can. Only bankers and Satanists fear Friday the 13th. So live it up while you can. Y'all have a good day. Live free.